Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Seek Power Always podcast, where you're taking that internal wisdom that you know you have to stand more deeply into your power and do it with a feminine flair. I am so thrilled to introduce to you our next guest, which is Meghan Neeley, who is an international speaker and business coach who has grown a multiple six-figure company mentoring women who know they are meant to be their own badass boss and turn their purpose and passion into profits. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. I'm so happy to be here. And I love just how courageously you serve women in standing in their power. And that's what I believe in more than anything. So I'm so happy to be in conversation with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so attracted to your branding, to the fact that you are stepping into badass boss. I think it is so powerful to be unapologetic to how you're showing up in the world. And women need to have these kind of role models to really be able to step into that. And we know that a lot of women will experience, fear as they're moving through the path of what they want to do. Were you always a badass boss, or what brought you to this place?
I think I always was at my core, and I would say that for every one of us, in our essence, we have these seedlings of who we really are and what's wanting to be born through us and come through us. But I did not always look like a badass boss. I did not always seem that way to the outside world. I was actually labeled as really shy and reserved, and definitely felt all kinds of insecurities and lack of confidence, and struggled with that for years. And so definitely not always a badass boss in presentation, but I always had these desires in me that were pulling me forward and really attracting me towards a bigger mission that just felt bigger than the way I was showing up.
Well, this is so important for women to hear, because they can look at you and they see that, you're beautiful, you're successful, it looks like everything has, put together. But for people to know that this, that there's a journey, right? That this wasn't like an overnight success. I mean, I think a lot of people talk about overnight success that can take 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's important to have that backstory so that as women, aren't comparing your journey to what may be their beginning or their middle, to really see what that is. So for women who might be at a point where they are maybe not as confident as where you are, being as courageous, how can they really begin in their journey, if they are at the beginning, to really step into that?
What a good question. I feel like the biggest thing that I did was starting to welcome home all the parts of myself that I had an ick kind of reaction to. So if I felt like, that shy one, she just holds me back, or that one that just doesn't feel totally confident, and the one that feels scared of taking a big leap and making a big decision or changing directions, all of that, I really had to welcome in all those parts of myself and allow myself to be with them and include them as I grow my business, and as I grow in life, because these aspects, when we try to push them aside or negate them, they're just going to rise up even bigger and get in our way even more than if we really say, okay, like I feel scared right now. Where do I feel that in my body? What's happening? And so that's a practice that I always take clients through when they're feeling like they're hitting up against some kind of block, is to really tune in with, okay, you have this word, like you might feel scared. Well, what's the sensation that's going on in your body? Maybe it's like a bubbling in your belly that's rising up towards your heart. That could be a lot of things, and we may label it as fear, and there's more going on. So we're starting to be aware of what our body intelligence is giving us as well.
Right. Yeah, I know you talk about practicing, being with fear, right? And, it seems like there is, whether it's subconscious or how we're trained about, pushing fear away and being in the practice of fear. What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say, so being with fear about making a big decision, for instance, making a change. For many of the women I work with, they're making the big leap from working for someone else to working for themselves. And they're afraid of not getting a paycheck anymore, of not getting health insurance, not having like the stability and consistency in the same way. And so rather than letting that fear be something that stops you, so any fear, but with this example, rather than letting that be something that stops you, I would invite them to really look at, okay, oh, when you think about not getting a paycheck, what's the sensation that you feel in your body? What are the thoughts that go through your mind? And then not attaching to any of those thoughts as truth. They're just thoughts, they're stories that are passing by. And you get to witness them and be with them, but then you get to decide, well, what other stories could you possibly make up? Maybe you could make up the story that that's right, you're not going to have the stable paycheck anymore because you're going to be making 5 times as much money. Does it really bother you not to have the stability if you're making 5 times as much? And then they would say no, but there's the fear that can come in and squash us before we even get started. So getting to acknowledge that this is just a story we're telling ourselves, and we get to choose to tell ourselves a better story, one that is actually moving us forward.
Right. I love that you use the word choice, because there's so many times when, life is happening and it can feel like things are happening outside of ourselves, and that there's these things that we have to do, and things are scripted and things are just like we're stepping into it. But being at that place of choice where we actually get to choose, including fear, right? That there is that part that allows us to move through those things and look at things in a different way. I know that you've mentioned about, asking your future self, right? How is it that you utilize, that kind of questioning to yourself, where you're asking your future self, what does she need? How are you utilizing that, and how does that fuel you?
Yeah. So I would say, the first thing is to get in touch with your future self, to actually get in touch with this one in you who is having big visions or dreams of what she's wanting to create and move towards. And then really ask that one. So I get in touch with her, usually meditation, visualization, experiences, and then asking that one, what does she need me to do? What does she want me to do as far as taking action in the world? Not just visualizing, not just sitting in the meditation. Those are really valuable, but we also have to be in action. And I love that you were mentioning that we often get into a feeling of like being without choice, feeling like a victim. And when we instead take back our power and say, oh, well, what does she want me to do? What choice could I make now that my future self would be really proud of? If you imagine yourself 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and then what choice would you be making that's not about this day to day? Because we can get so stuck in like, I need to figure it out just for today. And it's about the bigger vision.
Right. I think that's so helpful, because I think, all of us at some point get stuck in the minutia, right? It can feel like this day either, blew up or certain things happened, and we can feel like it can define all aspects of us. But when we can really kind of compartmentalize, going, you know what, it's not like your whole day got blew up. Maybe it was an incident, maybe it was 5 minutes, maybe it was even an hour, and to allow ourselves to go through the flow of that. But when we can have perspective and look at that bigger picture, I think it serves all of us on such a deeper level. And, is that something that when you're working with your clients that you really help them see beyond the minutia of the day?
Yes, exactly. And one of the things I always say is your mission and your vision is bigger than your fear. And so it's not about getting rid of the fear, but it's about letting that vision and that mission be bigger, even if it's just a little bit bigger today. And so that's one pivot I would always help them move towards. How can you actually embrace this bigger vision and mission that you're moving towards, and know that you get to take one step today that's in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for our listeners that, maybe they've already taken a step towards entrepreneurship, and, they're kind of feeling their way through, and they see the idea of having something bigger themselves, or having a mission, or having something bigger than themselves. If they've not identified what that is yet, how is it that they can how do you recommend women to choose that mission and to choose something if they really haven't ever looked at that before, or they maybe don't have something that's been close to their heart, through many years? They're just in that exploration of what would that thing be that would be bigger than them, that would be something that would get them out of bed to really step into. How can they discover that?
Yeah, well, that's one of the pieces that I really work on with women usually in the first month that they're working with me. Typically, we do year-long mentorships. And part of what we focus on in that first month is their genius discovery and understanding that each of us has our own genius. We're uniquely wired for giving these gifts from ourselves that are not about necessarily anything that you've even learned. Like some of you might have degrees or trainings and you're bringing that in, but it's also really about who you are innately. And so one of the things I always invite women to do is actually write about 8 experiences in your life. So if you're listening right now and you want to grab a piece of paper after this is done and actually sit with yourself and write out 8 different experiences that you've had in your life that have really been times where you felt like you were in timelessness, and you felt your expansion, you felt like you could just do that thing for hours or have that conversation for hours. You could be in that space and you weren't thinking about anything else. You were so present because it was really lighting you up. It was so juicy. Write about at least 8 of those experiences. And then as you look down the page, see what are you seeing in common? I just did this with a client recently, and we found 7 out of her 8 experiences were all about her feeling lit up when she was really connecting and impacting with people in person. And having that experience of really being with people, and especially with groups of people, and inspiring them and motivating them. And that's a really particular skill, to be motivating people in groups at the same time and being in person with them, that not everyone would have that come up. Some people might have much more like, theirs come up when they're writing and reflecting, and it's a really different skill. So it's just starting to discover for yourself, where do you actually feel lit up and ignited? And that's one of the pieces I talk about in business as well, as the turn on factor. Like, especially as women, if we're not turned on by it, if we're not feeling aroused by our work, why are we doing it?
This is so true. I think this is such an important conversation to have, because I think this is what distinguishes entrepreneurship than actually working for someone else. Because when you're working for someone else, there tends to be kind of this monotony about it, because you're doing the same thing and you're doing it for someone else, and what their vision is may not necessarily be an inspiration for you. And that's not to say that people can't, because I know people that work for other people and they have gotten behind, they've gotten lit up on the mission of the business, and it takes a village to do some of these things. Yeah. However, when you're starting to look as an entrepreneur, if you don't have that fire, if you don't have that thing, that reason that gets you out of bed, and I love you really focusing on something bigger than yourself. If you don't have that gets you out of bed, it makes it more challenging to get through those things that are not so fun, and the monotonous part that is an aspect of the business. But to know that there's something else that's fueling you gives you that energy to move past that. So when you look at your bigger picture, bigger reason, I'd love for you to share that. What is your bigger than you thing that fuels you?
Yeah, so for me, I often talk about having 2 sides of your why, of what fuels you. So when you're thinking about your mission or vision being bigger than your fear, let one of the reasons be really generous, and so it's connected to others and how you're actually serving. And then one, be really luxurious, that it's just for you. And so I can speak to both of those sides, that because I think it's also important that we include ourselves in it. It's so easy for us, anyone in the service-based world, we want to serve, we want to help. And I also really believe in being real, that we also want certain kind of lifestyle and reality for ourselves, and we get to have that. So both sides. And I would say the one that's really my generous why I really care about being of service to women entrepreneurs in particular, is I feel like the path to be your own boss is the foundation for a freedom-based lifestyle. It provides the opportunity for you to have total choice for how much money you want to make, when you're going to be working, where you're going to be working. You have you could have, if you want, total location freedom. You can take, 8 weeks off a year instead of 2, if that's what you want. And you get to make these choices for your life that really allows you to live your best life. And I care about living in a world where women are totally ignited and turned on, and they're coming from that place, because it ripples out who they show up with in their partnerships, to their children, to their families. All of that gets to ripple out from them feeling really in their full aliveness, from not feeling like a victim, not feeling at the effect of someone else and their plan for you, but they get to take the reins of their life. And I just love surrounding myself with women who are going for it in that way, because I see them really making a big difference in the world. So that's why I would want it for the world, why I do what I do. I really believe that being your own boss it's the path to getting to live a life that is your personal design.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, it's so important. And just, I mean, you can feel your passion and energy with this because you embody that, right? That's who you are. That's who you show up with. And by giving yourself that permission to live on purpose and live, lit up and on fire, it gives other women permission to step into that and to do that as well. So thank you for being that example, for one. And I would also love to hear what's the luxurious part of it?
So my luxurious why is I know that when I worked for others, I was always wanting more time off to be able to go to trainings and to go to retreats. And I was actually a yoga teacher for over half my life. And I was really locked into teaching weekly classes, many, sometimes up to like 15 classes in a week. And that did not give me the kind of freedom that I was really wanting. Though I work with yoga teachers, and we've found many new ways to create more freedom in their lifestyle. The way I was doing it at the time was very locked in to me being there constantly, and it felt like I was just on this hamster wheel of constantly needing to be working to just pay the bills. And even though I loved what I was doing, there was a part of me that wasn't feeling lit up by the quantity I was working in. So
Right.
the first part was just giving myself permission to actually be willing to work less, and that was something I wanted, and I wanted to have boundaries around my time. And so now at this stage, I take off about, I would say, about 15 weeks a year, 14, 15 weeks that I'm just totally off, and taking time for travel, and also taking time for my creative expression. And what I've noticed is I'm able to come and deliver so much more to my clients and really be able to show up in a much bigger way than when I was just working constantly.
Yes,
So
definitely. Well, this is such an important message for women to hear. In fact, I know some of you women who are listening right now, you're multitasking, you're probably driving, you're doing something else, you have all that happening. I would love for you just to take a moment, just to stop and drop what you're doing right now, and just take a deep breath and breathe into that right now, that you actually deserve to have the life that you actually want to live, and that taking time off, it's not a luxury. It's actually something that you need for yourself to rejuvenate, to actually be more on track. And you've heard it here, in that taking that time off away allows you to get a different perspective. It allows you to give the space to be more creative and to be more impactful in how you want to do things and what that looks like. So thank you again for being that example for that. I think it's so important. I love that you actually have this as part of your step in your business. A tenet of your business is to have that luxurious part, because yes, I also give as part of my business. There's so much we want to do in the world, and there's that giving aspect. And then there's so much that gets put back into a business, as an entrepreneur. But we always have to remember, if we're not feeding ourselves in some way, then that can actually lead to extinguishing the light that gave us the spark to do the things that we need to do. So I love the totality of which you move forward on. And I think it's a really helpful message for women to hear.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, it's so important, because this is not what any of us have been taught, or for most anyway. We haven't been taught that. We've been
Yes.
taught that we get a couple weeks a year, or that if we are off, it's the weekends and it's time to give to your family, or,
Right.
there's always going to be someone and something that's asking for your time.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of that is giving the self permission.
Definitely. So, and in this path of shifts and changes and things you're doing, I know that you have redesigned your life in this past year. So again, stepping out of that comfort zone, shifting and changing how and who you're being in the world. What kind of redesign happened for you?
Yeah, I had a huge shift. Just to get totally real, vulnerable with what happened. I was in a marriage it looked really good on paper. And we got a lot of comments from people about, oh, you're such a power couple and so amazing. You're both in the industry, both in the coaching industry. And although we did really, we supported each other very much in our work and showed up for each other in that way, I was not lit up in the actual marriage and intimate relationship. And that was draining me. And I could feel the split, definitely over the last year, especially between how I was showing up and sharing with women, like show up in your full vitality and your turn on and your essence. And as more and more as I would talk about those things, I could feel the places in me where there were gaps and where I wasn't really being honest with myself. And for me, a lot of that came in with my desire to actually be in a relationship with a woman. And I had suppressed that and pushed that down. And it had been in my past. And I felt like, oh, no, this is my life now. I've chosen this. We've built this life together. And I felt like I had to just keep going. And what I would say to anyone listening, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship or business, at any moment, you can completely dissolve and undo whatever you have created and start again. And it's not going to come without fear and feelings of discomfort. And I had months of those feelings and really having to move through the discomfort of not knowing what was going to happen next.
Right.
But as I unraveled and I took those first steps of honestly sharing with him and saying, this is not what I wanted. And then what else did I not want? I started to recognize that the way I was even working with clients needed to shift, and changing up some of my programs and how I was delivering events. And I just started to look at every different area of my life.
Right.
And that's where I would say that it's just that first thing that you become aware of, feeling like, oh, this is not gonna be okay. Or if I undo this, if I pull on this thread, my whole life is gonna unravel. Let it unravel.
Right.
Like,
Right.
let it be okay that the unraveling could actually be what is leading you exactly where you're meant to be.
Oh. Meghan, this is such an important message for women to hear, because sometimes we feel like we go down a path and there's no turning back. It's like, okay, you've walked down this path and this is what you have to continue and do. And it's part of how we support each other as women is to know that you can shift, you can change. It's so important to ask ourselves these questions, because the questions and who we've become and who we are maybe served us 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. And maybe we've not given ourselves permission to say, who am I now? What am I stepping into now? And it doesn't make how or who you were being wrong in the past. It's just who you're embracing to fully, embrace a newer version of yourself or where you're going and what that looks like. And I think it's so important for women. Again, we're coming back to giving ourselves permission, right? Permission to be who we are in the world, permission to how we show up, and to really allow that to happen in our life. So, thank you so much for sharing that. And to your vulnerability, I know is touching women who are listening to this now, who are maybe feeling something similarly. And, there's different areas of your life where this can all happen, where if we don't ask the question because of maybe fear that we have no idea what's out there for us or what's going to be different and have happen. So I'd love for you to share. I know that you said that you have a tool that you've used to help you be more courageous and to step into that. So I know everyone's leaning in to hear what that is.
Yeah. So the tool that I've used to help me really be more courageous and to honor the part of myself as well that feels afraid has been it's multi-layered. So it's that first piece that we were speaking to earlier of really getting clear on what is it that, what are these parts that you may be pushing away, and then including them and inviting those ones in. And then the other piece that I practice every day is really, really getting into the embodied experience of what it feels like to try on this life that you're wanting. So if you're wanting to do a redesign, if you're thinking about that, the first step is to give yourself permission to at least try it on. It doesn't mean that you're leaping off the cliff and you're making all the changes all at once, but just like you would go and try on a shirt at the store, you're trying on this life. And so taking one step to do that. And this is going to be different for every kind of situation or decision, right. But for instance, if someone was going to make a shift in their business and they're thinking, this is the direction I want to go in, what would it be like to just go out for a coffee date with yourself or a lunch date with yourself and imagine, this is who I am now.
Right.
This is how I'm living my life. I am now an entrepreneur and I have this business, and just notice, how are you feeling out in the world? How do you interact with people differently from that place?
Oh,
and
what a great tool. The visual that came up for me is almost like a paint swatch where you put like 6 different colors of paint on the wall. You're not committing to one of them. You're kind of living with it to see what actually, lives into for you, that actually resonates with you. And it gives you kind of that opportunity to try it on before you commit to the whole room.
Exactly. I love that. The paint swatch visual. Absolutely. It really is about not just jumping right into the commitment, because we can be so quick to just make a big decision and think, okay, I've got to make this change and I've just got to go in this direction. Well, give yourself some breathing room to actually try it on and see how it feels and what arises for you. And often the reason that we don't give ourselves that space is because there's the discomfort of the feelings that arise when we give ourselves the space. And that's exactly what we need to be with, truly, so that we can make decisions that are more aligned.
Definitely. Well, this, I think, particularly speaks so well into women, because what I've found, I don't know if you've seen this, I've noticed with my clients, is that there tends to be like an all or nothing mentality. It's like either they're going full on in and they're going for it, or they do nothing at all. And so to know that taking those incremental steps actually allows you to then see, maybe you need to make a little bit of shifts. And that's where I think if we don't allow ourselves that wiggle room, if you will, then that's, I think, where we feel like we're too far down the rabbit hole, where we don't feel like we can make different choices and we can turn the bus around and make things different and look at things in a different way and not make ourselves wrong for it. Right? That we can actually, it is an exploration, right? And I think this is part of where this conversation is so helpful for the women to be able to hear that there's so many choices and there's so many things that you can do to step more fully into your life and to not be limited by what either other people think, or even, worse yet, sometimes what we think about ourselves, right? And to get past those limitations to really step more deeply into that. And, on a lighter note, one of the things I love to ask my guests, because I really feel like your environment really supports you and really has you step into your life more fully. And so I always like to ask, what is your favorite room in your home and why?
Love that. Favorite room in my home. I would say my favorite room in my home is my bedroom. And it's because I have sweet, like sacred altar space and like all my crystals and my like flowers, and I have a huge king size bed that has lots of soft pillows and fuzzy blankets, and it really serves my like what I would call my lustful lover, for women who do S factor work at all. That's where I learned that term. The one that just wants to be surrounded by soft things, like soft lit areas and soft fabrics and lusciousness. And it allows me to come into this place of feeling like I can be in complete surrender, both surrender to myself, to restful time, to just turning everything off and turning down, and then also surrender to the divine and opening up to guidance that wants to come through. So that combination that happens in the bedroom.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. I love that so
Mm-hmm.
much. And I think that's an important thing, especially because we've talked a lot about women standing in their power and their empowerment and moving through their fears, and that can have a lot of masculine energy. But it's so
Mm-hmm.
important to have a space that feels soft, just like a soft landing in the world, and feel feminine and be in the flow and have all of it, right? And have all the flow of that. And so I love that your environment reflects that for you. It definitely shows up in your essence that you've created that space for yourself. So thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Diane. What a fun question.
So I know we could be talking here for a while and keep going, but I know that our time's coming to a close, and I know that people are going to want to stay connected to you, and I know that you have a free gift.
Yes. So one of the things that I found after working with clients for years and seeing the same kind of questions come up again and again is that there's often this gap right at the beginning when someone's making a choice. Do I want to be my own boss? What do I need to be focusing on? Maybe they've started the entrepreneurial path, but they still feel scattered, like there's so many different things that they could be focusing on. And so I created a checklist that's really simple. It's a 5-step checklist to be your own badass boss. And it starts you off with the 5 key things that you would want to have in place first in order for your business. So rather than feeling like, should I have a website, or should I do a YouTube channel, or should I start a group program? What are the actual foundational things, which are none of those, by the way, that you would need to do to actually get started and get your first paying clients? So I have that free gift at meghanneeley.com. And
Wonderful. Perfect. That is so great. I mean, we don't want to be reinventing the wheel, right? We want to be able to have these things, having a simple checklist, having things that I love sometimes where you say, or I'll say things like, it's a simple but not easy. And if you had the information, if you just had the little inside peek into things, it makes a big difference in the world. So we will also have the link of this on the show notes for people to be able to look at. So definitely everyone grab that. You'll want to stay connected to Meghan and, have these steps to be able to walk into and do the things that you are here to do on a bigger level. So any final thoughts, Meghan?
Well, when you grab that free gift, when you're downloading that free gift, you'll be invited into the Badass Boss Women Entrepreneurs Facebook group. And I would say that's just a great next step to have ongoing support, having a community of people around you, which is so vital, who are in a different kind of conversation, who are in a conversation of empowerment, who are in a conversation of trust that, yes, what I have to give, my gifts are valuable. And then they're also looking at what are the next steps that they need to be doing to actually get clients and make this a profitable business rather than just a hobby. And so being with others like you that are on that journey, as well as having access to myself and my coaches to ask your questions, is invaluable. So that'll be the next step after they download the checklist.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here on the show. And, for our listeners here, these are the type of tools that you want to have in your toolbox to help you move forward. Even if you don't even have a business yet and you're thinking about it, you're moving forward, these are ways to step more deeply into it. I also have a free gift for you where you can go to the liferesetquiz.com, and that will be in the show notes as well, liferesetquiz.com, where you get to see what are the things that are working for you. What is just one thing that you can shift that make a difference in your life? And we come together as community. This is how we grow. This is how we support each other. And whether or not you are watching this, on Facebook or YouTube or iTunes or whatever that forum that you're getting that on, please put a comment. Put a comment in there and share with us what's that one takeaway that you took, something that you learned. I would love for you to tag both Meghan and myself because we're here to support you. Any questions that you have, please bring it in there, have it be part of the conversation. And if you know that there's like that one sister that needed to hear this message, please share it. Please get it out there. Please connect, because that's how we all grow together, sharing the message, being in the conversations, and really being able to support each other on this deeper level. So I want to thank you, Meghan, again for being on the show. And I want to thank our listeners for taking the time to be here with us. And until we connect again, live your spa life and seek that power always within you. Bye for now.